Good morning, Hacksters. Today we have a very exciting guest, Kelly Heaton, who has created a Wonderland menagerie of electronic animals and also other projects that are very exciting that we'll get to as well. But good morning, Kelly. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Splendid. I'm so excited to have you on the show. I've just been geeking out about it to all my friends and stuff. So, could you explain maybe what is the deal with your bird projects, which are some of the main things we're going to look at today?
Yeah, birds are a culmination of more than 20 years of wanting to work with electricity as an artistic medium. When I first started, I got interested in it when I was a student at the Media Lab, but I actually didn't have any background in analog electronics. So it wasn't until after the Media Lab that I started learning analog electronics, and my reasons were that I felt they were lifelike. And it took me a long time even to just get, discrete transistors, resistors, capacitors put together in configurations where I could get anything out of it. And one of the reasons it took me so long was that I didn't have any background in the language. I didn't know how to read schematics.
Wow.
So, I didn't know how to, you can't find, you can't find something if you don't have the language for it, right? And the internet
Right.
was not developed back then. We didn't have social media like we have today. So anyway, little by little, I worked in the direction of birds. Well, let me step back and say, I think initially I felt that being able to make a circuit sing like a bird it was the holy grail, for me. And honestly, I wasn't sure I'd ever get there. I really,
Hmm.
yeah, I didn't really know it was possible, or at least possible for me. Um, so I started out with just like blinking, lights that would blink like tree leaves rustling in the wind, fireflies blinking, crickets chirping. I played around a lot with, how I could modify the chirp quality so I could make something sound like a tree frog versus a normal house cricket versus a katydid, so I guess one thing led to another. And as I began, as I moved along, I started to realize, a number of things that were humbling. Number one, like, wow, there are a lot of people that already know how to do this. And I'm just following in the shadows of giants. The obvious one are all of the analog synth people, right? Like Boucle synths or
Yeah.
synths. So there's that. And as I learned more about my waveforms, I became more cognizant of how the structures are defined, right? I started to understand better, like what's timbre, what's an envelope, how does a filter work? So I was already building these things just by chance because I had been playing around in an experimental artistic kind of way, destroying. Anyway, point being, it was humbling to discover that I had basically just kind of come around to learning what a lot of people already know. I would also put like Beam Robots in that group.
Oh
I
yeah.
learned about William Ray Walter's work with the early turtle robots. So by the time I got to birds, which was really just like a couple of years ago, it was taking these various chirping and sound making circuits and essentially capacitively coupling them together to get more complex waveforms with more grammar, so to speak,
Hmm.
right? Like a longer structure. And voila, yeah, I mean, that's really it, right? I was able to take these waveform patterns, give them like sentence structure, so to speak, and
Ah,
suddenly squeaking that's reminiscent of birdsong.
that's incredible. I would love to share with these folks some of your creations and just let us all hear what those sound like because it's really amazing. They really do sound like birds. It feels like being immersed in a rainforest or something. And there's so much variation between them. Oh,
And I've actually got everything set up. I can demo it live if you want.
yes! Please. Okay, I'll switch to
Yeah.
you.
All right. Well, I'm just going to start. I've got my remote control here, so everything's behind me. You can't see
Ah,
it, other direction. And just, tell me if the sound is good, and then I can walk you around to the sculpture. So,
wow.
okay. All right, there go the birds. Is it good? Coming through?
It's so good. Yes, it is.
All right. So here we go.
Oh, is this the most recent one?
Yeah, this one, you can adjust the bird song. Of course, when they're all going at once, you're not, you don't know what you're hearing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then
Wow.
you guys here. This is a piece called Birds at My Feeder.
Mm.
And that you're looking at the electronics there.
It's breaking up a bit, but you were showing us that little mylar house that sort of houses the bird brain, right? Oh, this is incredible.
Do you see it?
Yeah, there we go.
All right, so now I'll turn on the insects.
And folks, if you're having trouble seeing, we do have a link in the description to Kelly's Instagram where you can find many of these videos. For example, this green bird one that you just saw. But let's have a look at these insects. Oh, wow! These are such huge PCBs. They're really like whole paintings.
So I'll turn the birds off. They're back here. Now you can just hear the insects.
Oh, wow. That's so magical. It really, I was out in the woods a couple of nights ago and it sounds just like being out there with the crickets and the frogs.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm back.
So how are you producing these sounds?
So what has gotten really interesting to me has been over years of building them to recognize that there's a common unit to everything that just keeps recurring. And I'm about to tell you is also like another obvious statement that I discovered. But everything is vibration.
Right.
You need to have some way to amplify the signal into the audible range and then some form of output device, the speaker, right? But other than that, it's just vibration. Now, okay, it's just vibration in combination with filters. And what I mean by the filters is that I use discrete transistor astable multivibrators to just blink, and I can make them symmetrical or asymmetrical. I can change how fast they blink, right? And then I capacitively couple them together so that they just like pull on each other. And so I make like more complex vibrations based on what's a very, very simple unit. And then the sound quality is affected by how I filter it, whether there's a high pass filter or a low pass filter. And when I mean, I'm literally talking about a capacitor and a resistor.
Yeah, wow.
You can get fancy and add like a diode to clip the signal. But I mean, seriously, it's really that simple. It's just vibration. So that's been that's really fascinated me and gotten me more interested in thinking about what is consciousness, where does life come at all, and you know, if you read spiritual texts. I mean, the Hindus have been saying everything's vibration for thousands of years. The Hermetic principles also state everything is vibration, right? So I'm like, yeah, okay, well, all right. Well, I guess I figured that out at my breadboard, but it seems to be true.
And you have this viewpoint that artificial intelligence is destined to arise from hardware rather than software, physical
Yeah,
components.
absolutely. Yep. So that's not to say that there aren't distinctly digital aspects of mind. I think, obviously, even in analog, you can still be working with extremes and you can still have thresholds, right? Like with a Schmidt trigger or something like that. It's not like everything is always gray. But on some level, it is still gray. So even if something is extremely in this direction, there's always a little bit of this direction pulling back against it, which makes me think of like Marvin Minsky's Society of Mind, right? Where you have these competing elements and one just gets stronger than the other, but there's always that pull, that oscillatory, vibratory pull. I think memory is another example that does have where a digital metaphor is helpful insofar as I imagine memory very much like the old magnetic core memory, or a series of flip-flops that are in a state creating some sort of magnetic field that has permanence in a way. I mean, in the sense that computer memory has permanence.
Right.
That electromagnetic field, in my opinion, I mean, this is just theory, right, from an artist, but that I think that is what's triggering the active mental processes to oscillate in certain ways that have recognizable patterns, reproducible patterns. That's how I look at it. But otherwise, I think basically you're just dealing with neurons coupled together, triggering each other, firing, creating brain waves, oscillations. I mean, duh, we already know that.
We have it with our hearts as well.
There is no ghost in the machine. Nobody's writing code and putting it in our head. Right?
And likewise, you don't use any code in your pieces. You've got these other ones as butterflies as well, and people can see. I love your circuit drawings, by the way. These schematics are so obviously you're an artist, and just the way that you put these together is really incredible. And then you can see that really there's no software in here. It's just these amazing circuits.
No software.
When are you making these?
I'm not like on a war path against software. It's just that I guess I've gotten more and more vocal about the importance of analog because so many people are ignoring it in favor of digital. And I think that that's dangerous because when you are in and I do know how to write code, I'm not great at it, but I have written code. When you're in that mind frame of writing code, it's just a completely different mental model than the mind frame you occupy when you're thinking about analog and continuous signals. And so I think the danger of people all jumping on the digital bandwagon is that we lose that grassroots creativity and intelligence, and all the way up to the high levels of science. But we need that analog mentality to be working in tandem with digital, because ultimately we know that intelligence arises from some combination of the two.
That's wonderful. Let me see. Oh yeah, and in this one in particular, it says electricity is the spark of life up there in the top right.
Yeah, I have. This was the original board that I made. So this was where that started. I made that as a kit giveaway for the I don't know if you know Creative Capital. They're a wonderful arts group that supports a lot of American artists, and so I made that for them to give away at one of their retreat celebrations. And I made it as a kit because I wanted people to be able to solder it and kind of understand the art and the craft of being an electronic artist working with hardware. But I don't think anyone soldered it. I think more like 20 people got it, but I don't think anybody soldered it. So, oh
Did
well.
they got the components too, but I wonder if they
Yeah.
had, like, soldering irons where they were.
Yeah. Well, I tried to make it as easy as possible, but I guess it wasn't enough.
Ah, maybe they just thought it was so beautiful the way it is. I can understand not like that feeling of not wanting to mess it up or whatever, but also your compulsion to want people to engage with it, right?
Yeah, well, and yes, because when you solder a circuit that starts chirping like a bird, I mean, there's just, if it's presented to you, you don't have the same experience of it. And I
Hmm.
think the community knows that as well as anyone, that incredible educational, enlightening process of getting your hands on the hardware and making it work and having those aha moments that just don't
Hmm.
come from seeing something already created.
Is that partly why you made this new one with all these potentiometers at the bottom? Oh,
Yeah,
I have only a
yeah,
tiny version here, but
yeah. That actually, let's see. So that circuit is the same as what I put into this manufactured board.
uh-huh.
You can see. I'll turn this guy on. Find the switch. So I can adjust this for you, but and this is to get back to the potentiometers. Let's see. So I'm using these little pots that you adjust with a screwdriver. It's
Mhm.
fine. I can do it, but it's fiddly and it's difficult, like for a demonstration. Like I could do it, but I have to put my reading glasses on and be like, get in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
But just, I think it is kind of interesting though to look at the different forms. So that's the same circuit as what I have in the larger green bird piece. Yep, that one. And this is also the same circuit. Oops.
Oh, here. Ah, and one of the Mylar ones.
Yep. Yeah. So I was just looking at like different forms that
Mm.
sculpturally I can put the same bird circuit into. But then also, I mean, if I turned all of these works on at once, you would see that they are not all singing the same song, even though they're the exact same circuit. And that's because that's like the whole point of the circuit design is that the base resistance of the oscillators is adjustable. So I have a 2.2K fixed base resistor on all of the transistors in the 5 oscillators in the circuit. And then in addition to that, in series, I have a 100K potentiometer. So you can adjust the base resistance from 2.2K up to 102.2K. And
Hmm.
that's where the changes are coming from. And that's how I'm varying the vibration. And through the varying of the vibration, the grammar or the structure of the bird's song changes.
So there's these 5 oscillators that are all playing together, and do they change things like but you're still only hearing one tone. So does the interaction of the oscillators is that creating, like, a different shape of wave, like a sine wave, a square wave, a
Well, so what I'm doing is I have 5 oscillators that I'm at the end combining the signal into one, and then
Ah.
out to the bird, and the voice quality of the bird is fixed. I'm not adjusting that in this particular piece.
Hmm.
Um, so the voice quality of the bird, like the pitch, the tone, the pitch, the timbre of the sound, the quality of the bird's voice is that's not what I'm adjusting. So here, let me
Mm.
just put it in real quickly, and then you can hear it.
That's right. It doesn't change from like a mellower to a deeper tone or like a brighter to a sort of softer one.
No. So the bird's voice is all up in here, which you can't
Hmm.
see terribly well, but there's an audio transformer and
Ha.
there's an amplifier and some filters basically to just, I mean, I fiddle around to figure out like, a 47 picofarad capacitor gives me the nicest chirp sound for the bird. But so the patterns though are happening down here, which you can see with these blinking lights.
Oh, yeah.
So if I change,
Oh, yeah. It's become these more sort of like slow rising tones. Oh.
so as I get in here and change, so the differences in the song that you're hearing is just the result of the oscillators coupled together vibrating each other.
And we have a close-up of that from your Instagram here, which again, folks, is linked in the description. If you see any of these and you want to get like a sharper, closer look, you can totally go and check that out. But I warn you, you will get lost. There's so much amazing stuff in here, along with your website.
Oh, I really don't want people to get lost. I'm trying so hard to make it understandable because
Oh, yeah.
it's quite simple what's happening. And I guess what I'm trying to help people see is that the pattern that you just heard, like without those oscillators, the audio output would just be a terrible sounding beep. Like, I don't know if any of you have ever plugged in a piezo speaker without,
Uh-huh.
and it's just like, right? So I'm taking that voice quality what the bird has and modulating it with a signal that's generated by only 5 oscillators. So that means
Yeah.
a total of 10 transistors, right, broken into pairs, which gives you 5 astable multi-vibrator oscillators, which is how I create my oscillations. And then by coupling them together with capacitors of different values, that's how you're hearing it go.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
That's how I'm making the signal. So I'm really trying to make it simple,
Oh, for
but
sure.
I guess I'm not getting there.
Oh, I didn't mean to imply that someone would get lost in terms of understanding what's going on, because you have all these amazing videos that really walk people through sort of what's going on. Like this one, for example, there's all these captions that sort of tell you what's going on. What I mean is that there's such a vast amount of beautiful things that it's easy to
Oh,
lose, like, I say lose, but like to spend many hours just like delving into it, and I was trying to pull out what I thought were the most vibrant examples for this video and the things that are most relevant to us, but I kept just sort of like I had to remember to email you back because I was like, which ones am I gonna put in here? There's so much beautiful stuff.
well, we'll have to talk again.
Oh, yes, for sure. So again, folks, you can find this walkthrough here. You also have descriptions on your website of the materials that you're using, including, for example, here,
Mm,
this whole description of who your inspirations are. This I had to look up this Zuber house of
There.
wallpaper makers that you're sort of inspired by.
Mhm.
Could you tell
Well,
us a little bit about the materials that you use?
yeah, well, since you mentioned Zuber,
Zuber.
Zuber is a French block printing company that's been around since the 1700s. And I mean, they are the geniuses of block printing. Um, Beautiful, beautiful block printed wallpaper with many, many, many layers. And it's totally high technology for its time. And even to this day, it's still astonishing, like how they deconstructed images into all of these layers to rebuild it then out of blocks. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I love the deconstruction and the technology that goes into looking at images that way. And it speaks very much to digital technology and image making today, especially vector-based images. But I'm a screen printer. And the reason I became a screen printer, there's two reasons. One is that I wanted a craft whereby I could translate my digital images into a beautiful work of art. And so if you think about that, like you can either just print it on a machine, but that's not so, unless you build the machine yourself, you know, and it has some like quality to it. It's just like millions of people have Epson printers, right? You know, so kind of just, it's not that aesthetically exciting. You can make a painting of the digital image, but that's, you know, okay. I mean, a lot of people do that. But screen printing, right, is kind of perfect because then you just deconstruct your image, like using Photoshop or Illustrator, you burn your screens and then you rebuild it. So, you know, very much like what Zubair is doing with blocks, I just do it with screens. Because although I have thought about laser cutting wood blocks and trying to go at it that direction, but truthfully, the more I've tried block printing, the more respect I have for Zubair.
And you do show some of the screen printing like processes. Well, this one is where you're adding foil to these chipboard pieces to create conductive traces. Is that right?
So they're actually not conductive.
Oh, okay.
The foiled parts are just aesthetic, but that's okay. So that circuit board that you're showing there, yeah. I mean, the fact that it's a cross is just like, you know, because it was a cool shape, it was pretty, and to distinguish it from some of the other elements. But that cross piece, which is what I'm holding here, is the board where all I did was just give myself a bunch of slots to plug in resistors, capacitors, diodes, and switches to be able to turn filters on and off. So this is my connector board for my vibrating or insect systems, oscillator systems. And then I have this egg-shaped board here that is nothing but audio amplification and speaker output. Okay, so audio, just the voice. And then these guys are the star of the show, my little circles here. These are my little multi-vibrator boards I had made. So what you were just looking at with the foiled traces, I laser cut those traces and then I put my circuits into, you see the holes. The yellow is just the masking so that as I'm applying the acrylic and the foil, I don't screw up my actual circuit board. So I and removed it later. But so I could put, you know, 100 coupled oscillators into a piece with a voice board out, and God only knows what I get from that. Some sort of very complicated bird song, but that's the direction I guess that my work is going. Although I have to say what I have not solved for yet, and I've been writing grants around this, I want to incorporate, I mean, I have put sensors into my work like photoresistors or motion detectors, but I really want to take it one step further to build an analog circuit that can hear, like with an Electrotet microphone, but have some basic memory to record what it hears and then allow that memory to then affect the vibration. In other words, so that the bird can do like a call and response. Because how cool would it be if I could put an analog electronic bird outside and then have it hear a bird song and try to sing it back?
Oh, this reminds me of your deepfake bird song. Sorry, what?
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about this project with the deepfake bird song? It's a pretty recent one and it's fascinating.
Yes, it is. So Johann Diedrich is a sound artist and a computer scientist, and he works with machine learning. neural nets. And I happened to, on Instagram, see a post that he made about a piece of software he developed to analyze or to hear bird songs and then identify the species of the bird. And I was like, oh my God, I want your software to listen to my bird. I took this guy, I call it my bread bird, nerdy title. I took my bread bird, my adjustable bread bird to Brooklyn right before COVID hit. And
Wow.
Johan recorded some audio and then ran it through his machine learning bird song identification software, and it made some species matches. Now, I mean, is the software flawed? Is the circuit? I mean, who knows? It was one of those fun, curious exercises that is not like real science, but it just is close enough that it was like, this is cool. I don't really know what it's telling us, but it's just cool. Computers trying to identify bird song and being exposed to fake birds. I don't know. It's just cool.
And some of them are, confidence as low as like 25 to 50%. But one of them, it matched it 47 times.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's a pretty high match.
I would love to see what would happen if you brought this to a place where those silky-tailed nightjars live and like see if they'll actually talk back to it.
Yes. Well, so this project got even more interesting because a colleague of mine from college, Nico Arcia, who works in bird conservation and is a bird biologist, a conservation specialist, I talked to her about it to say, like, this is so interesting, Nico. Like, why is it that Johan's software is picking out this silky-tailed nightjar? And what she said, just as a theory, and again, we haven't tested this, but that
this guy,
that in birds, like as a huge, and now I'm not going to use the right language because I'm not a biologist, but like,
for sure,
if you take all of birds, right, there's this notion of pre-passerine and then passerine, and passerine basically just means songbirds. So birds that sing really interesting, complicated songs are in the passerine group. The pre-passerines are the ones that just go like, car, car, or, just make like a really, like not a, so passerines interestingly co-evolved with flowering plants. And yeah, so this fascinating, like brief history of birds and why they sing. And yeah, so songbirds that were more recent than their ancient avian ancestors, the pre-passerines. But so there's a category of bird though called the near passerine, if I'm not mistaken, that has songs, but they're not very complicated. And Nico was saying, well, perhaps because your circuit does more than just caw caw, but it's not as complicated like as a full-blown mockingbird like going off for hours. Maybe the software identified or associated it with this near passerine, which apparently a silky-tailed nightjar is. Yeah, like I said, it's not real science, but it's like interesting enough in a scientific way that you're like, what is it exactly? Is it art or is it just some weird other?
Yes.
I don't know. It's cool.
Speaking of art, you've got all these, it's not just birds, you've got so much other stuff, and the insects that you showed us are gorgeous as well. There's also all this other art that you've done, and I just want to show people, especially this particular piece that just wowed me. This is this an actual, this is a circuit diagram that we're looking at?
That actually is a circuit diagram. So I'm really interested in circuitry as a metaphor for spirituality and like looking at the correlation between vibration and your chakras. And, anyway, so this is I love this work, by the way, and I really want to get back doing it. it can be hard as an artist sometimes, like finding the grants or the right support. But I really want to make this piece as like a giant sculptural totem. Like the chakras like rendered in this crazy free-form electronic language, right?
You've got like an LED for a particular chakra. You've got a what is it? The gut solar plexus is like a piezo signal in to what looks like an amplifier or something.
Well, the solar plexus is of course yellow, right? And then if you go, your sex chakra is red, and then root would kind of go into like an almost non-visible reddish brown. Anyway, that drawing goes up to the top of the page and then starts over at the bottom and goes up again. My notebook wasn't tall enough, but I love that drawing too.
It's so amazing. It's just, I've never seen anyone depict circuits this way. It's so magical.
Well, thanks. I'm really glad. I think it's interesting, like that kind of language I find to be so visually rich and beautiful just in its own artistic, expressive way. I did an entire show where I really pushed that in a couple of pieces called Pollination. It's from 2015, where I used resistors and capacitors and transistors in this, in this very sculptural, metaphorical way to express the flow of energy through all things, but specifically dealing with ecological issues and the honeybees and so forth.
Yeah,
so,
and you have this phrase, electronic naturalism. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oop, there we go.
Yeah, well, it fits. Right?
For sure. Speaking of other types of art, electronics that you've done, you've got this physical pixel project, which was back in 1999. Was this your thesis? I was reading the paper on this. It's so fascinating.
Yeah, when I was at the Media Lab, most of my colleagues, again, were heading in a software direction. And my feeling at the time was
Pardon me.
That's okay. Bless you.
Some tea went down the wrong tube. So you were at sorry, the Media Lab?
I was at the MIT Media Lab, and most of my colleagues were focused on aesthetic computation, so writing beautiful code, successor to the NFT world of today. And I thought code was cool, and I liked writing code and the really interesting images and generative images you could make with it. But no matter what kind of code I wrote, the only way I could experience it was like, bam, or on my flat computer monitor.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, well, I know this sounds weird because I didn't really identify with being a sculptor. I really at that point identified as a painter. But I guess what it did was showed me like just how sculptural the act of painting actually is. The surface matters, the texture of the paint or collage elements, even drawings, the texture of the paper and the graphite. Like this is just so important to an experience of a work of art. It's not just that flat image on a monitor. So that's why I went in that direction.
And you made 3 different types of physical pixels that you could program with colors?
Yeah. The one that was my thesis was that I actually have all these years later, guys, super old and delicate, but this is the digital palette that I just fire up here. This is just the little boot mode. This is programmed in firmware, by the way, and I didn't do the programming because I didn't have the skills to do that at the time. It was done by a friend of mine, Stephen Gray. But anyway, if you select one of these pots, well, that one, there we go. You can turn the knob to shift through the hue spectrum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then you can program animation into them, and when you tap one of the paint pots, it will using infrared, communicate the information about your pigment, your colored light pattern to your display, which was, in this case, my thesis was on this system of reconfigurable. Oh, can you see those light up blocks? These aren't plugged in, but
Here we go. Yeah.
Piano. So this is based on a shape filling curve, and yeah, it has a couple different kinds of blocks that you can connect in different configurable ways. And so, I mean, clearly this is research, right? It's not, it's quite humbling when you try to make your own, especially sculptural display, and you realize how difficult it is to even get like 10 by 10 pixel resolution.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah, you
It's a
need
lot.
100 of them.
Yeah. I mean, computer monitors, let's face it, are like one of the most amazing and underpriced things in history. I mean, they've learned how to manufacture them, but right, like a computer monitor, can you imagine trying to make one? Holy cow.
Yeah, no. I feel like that's something like Ben Krasnow would do, one of those applied science people.
Well,
These are so cool. And then you also had some oh yeah, another cool drawing. And then you also had so there's these orb type ones, or sort of
yeah, so
dome type ones.
that's a system called NAMI that I didn't develop actually. It was developed
Ah,
by Robert Poor and Andrew Wheeler.
uh-huh.
I just worked on the project. I actually made the physical objects that you just saw. I made the casing, but the electronics and the communication behavior in NAMI was not my work. But Steve Gray and I worked to get the digital palette to be able to communicate with NAMI so that you could send patterns of color to it. And by the way, I'm surprised you haven't asked me about reflection loop or my work with reprogramming Furbies, because
That was actually what I was about to bring up, because you had in your paper you had Nami, and then you had the cubes, and then you had these Furbies, and that's literally the thing I was just pulling up.
okay. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. So again, Stephen Gray and I at this point were working together and wrote the firmware to Furby, remove, put put the CPU back into that board. So we put ourselves in the middle between the Furby brain and the body. And do you want to play the video of the walk? Is that a result of it?
Oh, our signal is really breaking up here, but if you folks look on the website at the reflection loop area, there you can see that, as Kelly was saying, they're going in between the sort of Furby's brain and its eye and face structure, and there's more of these amazing drawings. I hope we get her back soon. But in the meantime, we have these just incredible.
Am I not here?
Oh, here we go. Hello.
Oh, hi.
We lost you for a moment.
Here.
Yay.
I was gonna say, I don't know if you want to play or not, but the video of the Furby wall is what people call it. It's actually called the pool. That's its title, but everyone calls it the Furby wall.
I'm looking for the video and I'm not sure where it is.
Yeah,
But I think you can also screen share if you feel like doing that. Let me see if I can find
I
a
don't
video
have
of someone else. Let's see. Reflection pool.
Yeah, it's called, well, the
Loop.
body of work
Reflection loop.
reflection loop, and that particular sculpture is called the pool. I need to post it again. Isn't it weird now we live in this time where like you constantly have to like keep recycling your old content to shove it back out there, otherwise like, it's gone. It doesn't even exist.
Oh, here we go. Found it. Oh, they're all opening their little eyes. Is this based on proximity or?
Every single Furby had an infrared proximity detector. And
Oh.
if so they were like living pixels. If the Furby detected your presence, then it would wake up and start pattering and mirror your body in Furby.
How many Furbies are in this?
It's a 20 by 20 grid.
Oh,
So 400.
that's so many Furbies.
Yeah, it's interesting. At the time, I was thinking that the piece would finally be like shown again or whatever in 2020. Isn't that funny? But also 2020 because people talk about 2020 vision.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
my statement on machine intelligence, thinking that finally by the year 2020 that vision of machine intelligence would really have come into sharp focus. And yet we got something actually that's probably even more like it, which is this weird pandemic virus, which is like weirdo reprogrammed Furbies in and of itself.
Mm. I wanted to show off more of your uh drawings here just because like this diagram of the Furby is ridiculously cool. I want this on a t-shirt, honestly, or like a poster. That's incredible.
Yeah, well, I might be able to hook you up.
Yes. That'd be amazing. I would so wear that. Yeah, what you say about us getting this virus instead of the purported 2020 vision, maybe it does give us more, it's giving us more insight into, I think, some aspects of society that maybe we hadn't popularly thought about too much before. And
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
these are just amazing. If there's anything else you'd like to throw in there before we wrap up, we're coming to the end of our session. As you think about that, everyone, you can go to kellyheatonstudio.com, as we have linked in the description, as well as Twitter and Instagram to stay on top of the newest things, and just to dig through all this. As I was saying, you do have so much material on how you're building these things to sort of explain the whole process. It's amazing.
Yeah. People might also be interested to check out the full body vibrator that I made out of Tickle Me Elmo. That's a live pelt from 2003. Since you've been looking at one of my Elmo trophy heads.
Yeah, on the wall behind you.
Yep.
Up there. Wow. So it's a full body Tickle Me Elmo. Oh, look at that. Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Again, I feel like they're, and there's a whole rack of the trophies.
Well,
Amazing.
I mounted all 64 of the Elmo heads on trophy plaques and we all send them off on eBay. And that piece is called In Trophy. It's a performance because the idea is that like one day I want to see if a curator can get them all back together again for exhibition. And of course, the answer is probably no. I mean, In Trophy.
Yeah, after a certain period of time, it seems very difficult, but here we go.
Yeah.
Here's the guts. So they're all speakers. Or
Well,
is it do they have a physical transducer as well?
No, those are just the guts of 64 previously owned Tickle Me Elmos that I trapped on eBay, skinned, and made into a full body high fashion coat that giggles and quivers when you touch it.
Wow. Wow. That's wow.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that. I love these. And trophy. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. There's, again, so much more to explore here. I hope everyone has fun digging through Kelly's whole oeuvre and thank you again for joining us. Thank you everyone for watching, and yeah, come on again anytime. We'd love to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Bye.